Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Chachadasatarine Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadvaisa Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. We're going to, I think we should start by chanting the verses. Yeah. Like we did yesterday. You all have your book, and then we'll... There's not a sheet. You didn't print out a sheet with all the verses, did you? That would be nice.
I'll get it.
For tomorrow?
Yes.
That would be good. So everyone at home, watching on video, you can chant. They chant Isopanisad, beginning with the invocation and the 18 verses. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadhyaya Purnameva Vasishyate Ishavashyam idam sarvam Yatkincha jagatyam jagat Tena tattena bhunjitaha magridaha kasya svidhanam. There's a typo in this book. Did you notice? Right here? Kasya. How did that happen? There's an F in front of the K. Strange, right? This is BBT India, mass distribution. It's a typo. Kurvani vaha karmani jijivishakshatam samaha evam tvai nanyate tosti na karmani Hare Krishna. Asurya namate loka adhena tamasa pritaha ste pritya vigaschachanti jete chatmahano janaha vigaschanti anejadekam manasujabhyo nayana deva apnavam purvam ashat tadhavatam yana tyakitishta tasminapo matarishva tadhati tad ejati tanaijati tad dure tad vantike tad antarasya sarvasya tadu sarvasya bhayataha. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani manupasyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato vajnagupsate. Hare Krishna. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmayva bhutijanataha tatroka mahaka shoka ekatvamanupashyataha sabhare jakshu kramakayama pranam Vishnaviram Shudam Apapa Vidham Kavir Manisi Paribhushayambur Yatharyatoritam Yadatach Chasvati Vyasamabhyaha. 1970, we would chant before we take prasadam, the whole Isopanisad by heart. Prabhupada wanted us to memorize it. Text 9. Andham tamaha pravishanti ye vidyam upasyate tatabhuyani vate tamo yau vidyayam iti sushumadhiranam yenascha vijachakshire. I think there's supposed to be an A in front of the first word in the second line. Does anyone know? Hold on. We're going to stop. We're going to double check. Yeah, that's another typo. Someone has to tell the BBT. It's anyad evahor vidyaya, anyad ahor avidyaya. The second word is not, is missing an A. Strange, huh? Who printed this? Is this the Krishna book?
No.
BBT.
Mumbai.
Strange. I wonder if they know, if they realize. We've already found 2 mistakes. Text 11. Vidyam chayas vetad vedo bhayam saha avidyayamritam tirtva vidyayamritam ashnute. Text 12. Andham tamaham pravishanti ye sambhutim upassate tadabhuya ivate tamo javu sambhutim rattaha. Anyadivahur sambhavat anyadahur sambhavat iti shushumadhiranam yenastad vijachakshire. Sambhutim cha vinasam cha yastad viro bhayam saha vinashinam ritam tirtva sambhutyam ritam ashnute. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pitam mukam tattvam puncham apavrina satya dharmaya drishtaye. Punchame karshe jamasurya prajapatya vyuharasmin samaha teja. That teja is on the, supposed to be on the second line. So the second line should vyuharasmin samaha teja. Hold on. I think it's tejaha. It's supposed to be tejaha. You have a different book?
The older.
Yeah, so the third typo. It says tejo. Here it says tejo, it's supposed to be tejaha. That's very interesting, isn't it? Let's try it again. Punchame karshi yamasurya prajapatya vyuharasmin samoha tejaha yate rupam kalinam tastam. Wait a minute. Tamam? Tamam. Kalyamam. Kalyana tamam. Okay, sorry. Tejayate rupam kalyan tamam tate pasyami yo savaso purusham so ham asmi. 17. Bhayo anilamam ritam atedam ashnutam shriram om krutosmara kritam smara krutosmara kritam smara. And 19. Agnenaya supataraya asman vishvani deva vayunani vidvan duyorashman juhranam eno uyishtam tenam uktin vidhema. So, I decided to change the strategy because I wasn't happy with yesterday, and then I realized we have more time now, so I want to read. I want us to read the book. And then we'll discuss. Just give me a second, I have to bring up a file. This is the flower I'm allergic to. It gives me rashes. But where's it from? Rajagana. So let's read mantra 1. Now, something interesting about Isopanisad we're going to find out in this mantra. The word Isha Vashyam. We know Isha as Ishvara. And Vashyam means to exist. So Isha Vashyam, Idam Sarvam, actually means he exists within everything. That's actually a description of the Supersoul. So some acharyas have commented that Isopanisad is a description of the Supersoul. And the verse 1 and 2 are kind of summaries of this whole idea. Vas, to exist, to live. He lives with idam jagat, within this jagat. So I'm going to read the purport, and then we may stop to discuss it. The primary points. So first we'll get you to understand the primary points, because this is an actual Bhakti Sastri class where you have to answer some test questions, so we want to make sure you are clear on that, and then we'll go more deeply into it. Ishar Vasham idam sharvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyak tena bunjita ma gridha kasya. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. I have a commentary here by 5 different acharyas. I just wanted to read a few translations that they've given. It just sheds some spice, we could say, to the Sanskrit. The entire universe, whatever exists, is Prakriti. The entire universe, whatever exists in Prakriti, is pervaded by the Lord. Enjoy what is given by the Lord, but do not desire the wealth of others. So, pervaded by the Lord means Supersoul, right? Advasyam idam sarvam. Another translation. The Lord is inside and outside of everything in this world and beyond. So who's that? Inside and outside. Paramatma. Interesting. Did you know that? That it was describing Paramatma. Therefore, experience the objects of the world with a sense of detachment, since nothing belongs to oneself. Do not desire anyone else's wealth. Did you ever desire the wealth of Bill Gates? Any of you ever thought, I'd like to be as rich as Bill Gates? Or Steve Jobs, or what's the other one? Warren Buffett. This is from Baladev Vidyabhushana. This visible world and whatever exists beyond perception is under the control of the Lord. Because of this, you should enjoy only what is allotted to you by the Lord through karma. Do not hanker for more than that. Whose property is it? That's an interesting translation. I want to read that again. This visible world and whatever exists beyond perception is under the control of the Lord. So what you see, what you don't see, everything. Everything animate, inanimate. What you see, what you don't see. Because of this, you should enjoy only what is allotted to you by the Lord through karma. So you might say, but how could you enjoy any more than your karma? Because this seems to indicate that you could try to enjoy more than what you're allotted. Doesn't it? Because otherwise, why would you even have to tell someone, don't try to enjoy beyond what is allotted? I find this interesting because Prabhupada said, no matter what you do, you will get a certain amount of wealth because it's allotted by your karma. So then the question comes, can you get more wealth than is allotted by your karma? Or the question is, what does this verse mean? Does it mean you're trying to get more than is allotted by your karma and you can't? Well, that seems to be what Prabhupada indicates. But the next line, do not hanker for more than that. Whose property is it? Do not hanker for others' property. But what does Prabhupada say? He says, one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Don't take more than your quota. So it also indicates that you obviously could endeavor for more than your quota. And it has some indication you could possibly, if you work like a mutha, maybe get more than you were supposed to get. But we'll talk about that. It's interesting. Because of this, you should enjoy only what is allotted to you by the Lord through karma. Then you might ask, well, how do you know what's allotted to you? And Prabhupada said, don't work more than 8 hours a day. It's in the Bhagavatam. That's how you know what's allotted to you. What you get with 8 hours of work, that's allotted. Of course, your boss may make you work 10 hours. That's another thing. But the idea is don't endeavor like an ass to get more than what comes naturally and easily. Do not hanker for more than that. Whose property is it? Of course, sometimes, as we know, Lakshmi is fickle. You get a lot and then you lose a lot, like the stock market now. Everyone who's invested in the stock market has lost, what, 25, 30% of their money. It's just gone. Right? In one little virus, you've just lost a third of your money. So, how much can you control? I want to talk about that a little more. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's translation. It's interesting because Sanskrit words have different meanings, so you can get slightly different translations. And sometimes a translation will indicate what the author wants to focus on, emphasize. Whatever exists in this universe is all covered by the Lord, all pervading, Paramatma again. Because of this, you should enjoy along with the practice of renunciation. That seems to be a contradiction. Enjoy what he's given you, but be renounced. Can you be renounced and enjoy? So, you should not hanker after the wealth of others. So that translation was also there in another verse. And then they're using the word, a couple of these acharyas have used the word enjoy, which is, for devotees, enjoy, that's a nasty word, right? Isn't it? You don't use that word. Only use that word in relation to Krishna. Here the word enjoy is being used in relation to us. And so what does that mean? Well, it means Krishna is providing for every living entity according to their karma. So when we say enjoy, I don't actually mean enjoy in sense gratification per se. It means this is what Krishna has given you. Right? You have a body, you have a certain amount of wealth, a certain amount of intelligence, and so enjoy means more in the sense that this is what you're allowed to have. This is your quota. But then the next word is detachment. So how could you have enjoy and detachment at the same time? Because they're antonyms, the exact opposite. Right? Prabhupada, the way he describes it, he said, live comfortably. That means take what you need. What is Prabhupada in his verse? Take what you need as your quota. So you could say take also means enjoy. Enjoy means utilize what you need to live comfortably, peacefully, and then detach from everything else which is beyond your quota. So that's more a balance of the understanding. This is what I need according my karma I'm given, and beyond that I don't make an effort and I detach. And ultimately, as we know, as devotees, we take everything in the spirit of detachment. It's all, nothing belongs to me. So, let's read the purport. I need my book back. Do we have more books? We have another book for you? No?
I have my mobile.
You have it on your phone? Purport. Vedic knowledge is infallible because it comes down through the perfect disciplic succession of spiritual masters, beginning with the Lord himself. Since he spoke the first word of Vedic knowledge, the source of this Vedic knowledge is transcendental. The words spoken by the Lord are called apurusheya, which indicates that they are not derived by any mundane person. I think we discussed this yesterday, didn't we? Did I?
Yeah, we discussed.
Anyway, let's read it for those with bad memories. A living being who lives in the mundane world has 4 defects. He's certain to commit mistakes, he's subject to illusion, he has a propensity to cheat, and his senses are imperfect. Remember? CI. So, illusion and imperfect, and cheating, and commit mistakes. No one with these 4 imperfections can deliver perfect knowledge. The Vedas are not produced by such an imperfect creature. Vedic knowledge was originally imparted by the Lord into the heart of Brahma, the first living being, and Brahma, in his turn, disseminated this knowledge to his sons and disciples who have handed it down through history. You understand my accent, or should I speak like an Indian? It's okay? Yeah, it means you watch American television, so you understand my. You've just revealed it in movies. Right? Since the Lord is Purnam, all perfect, there is no possibility of his being subject to the laws of material nature, which he controls. However, so what is the definition of God? Well, the definition of God is supreme controller. And so practically, what does that mean? Well, one thing it means is we're not God, because we're not supreme controllers. So one time Prabhupada said, someone said, what's the philosophy of Krishna consciousness? And he said, God is great, you're not great, therefore you're not God. So the definition practically of supreme controller is that there's nothing that controls him unless he wants it to control him. So you might say, but Krishna is controlled by his devotees, but he wants that. Krishna is controlled by love, but he's allowing himself to be controlled by love. Just like sometimes when Krishna is doing leelas, you might wonder, it doesn't seem like he knows that he's God, because he's crying, he's running from Mother Yasoda. Is he just acting, or does he actually feel fear? And the answer is, whatever he wants is what he wants. So if he wants to feel fear and not know his divinity, then by his desire he can do that, because he's the supreme controller. So if he wants something to overpower him, like Yogamaya, and illusion him, it's only because he wants it that it happens. That's the meaning of supreme controller. So even if you're being controlled, it's because you want to be controlled. You can't be controlled outside your willpower to be controlled. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to allow Mother Yasoda to control me. I'm going to allow Yogamaya to illusion me. I'm going to allow Radha and the gopis and all my devotees who love me, I'm going to allow them to control me. That's what I want. That's supreme controller. So even you're controlled, it's because you've designed it that way. It's not that way for us, is it? So, supreme controller means you don't have to allow anything to control you unless you want it to control you. And not being the supreme controller, being Jiva Tattva, means there's so many things controlling us we wish weren't controlling us. Right? Like right now we're being controlled by the coronavirus. And it's creating so many problems. The tourist industry now is destroyed. People aren't traveling. Airlines are... You know, President Trump, he just passed, I don't know if it's passed yet, that if you're a European, you can't come to America. And they said that last March of 2019, European tourists spent $3 billion in America. So right there, $3 billion of income to American businesses is lost, devastating. And so many layoffs because they don't need all the workers. So one little virus is setting the whole world in turmoil. Yeah. So many people are suffering. Which demonstrates we're not the supreme controller, but people have a hard time understanding that, even in situations like this, because we're trying to be controllers, get rid of the virus, and go back to controlling everything we think we can possibly control. Okay. If we're so good at controlling, why won't we stop aging? Especially the women. Over 35, 36, they start becoming depressed. And over 45, it's like severe depression. They don't, you know, for a woman, physical beauty is everything. And, you know, when you get old, it just, you know, you can only stay young for so long. And so, if every woman were a controller, definitely they wouldn't allow themselves to get more than like 26, 27. Am I right? Maybe 24. Yes? And maybe the guys, you know, when their muscles start flapping. Not over 30, yeah. So the definition of God as supreme controller means He is in control of everything. And that's why this idea that God is an old man with a long gray hair and a long gray beard, has completely misunderstood the idea of supreme controller. If he's the supreme controller, why would he let time control him? Right? But as we know, Krishna is Navayovanam. He's an eternal youth. Time does not control Krishna. Who controls time? Krishna controls time, time I am. And so, if you control time, then you can stay any age you want. You can stay 16 or 24, whatever you want. Right? So, this idea that God has a gray hair and is an old man is completely insane. That means they haven't even understood basic idea that God controls everything. We're Christians, we say God's the supreme controller. Then why do you think he has gray hair? And he's an old man. Well, he's the oldest. So he's not in control of time. Does he have arthritis also? Crazy. Hare Krishna. Since the Lord is Purnam, all perfect, there is no possibility of his being subjected to the laws of material nature, which he controls. However, both the living entities and the inanimate objects are controlled by the laws of nature. and ultimately by the Lord's potency. This Isopanisad is part of the Yajur Veda, and consequently it contains information concerning the proprietorship of all things existing within the universe. So actually, what this verse is doing is just defining what is God, because as we can see, a lot of people don't even understand basic definitions of God. Proprietorship, control, within everything, Maya Dakshena. His vision is everywhere, he sees everything, he knows everything, he's within everything, he's outside of everything. The Lord's proprietorship over everything within the universe is confirmed in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verses 4 and 5, where para and apara prakriti are discussed. So, you have to know this for your test. Para, thing is, you have an advantage because you're Indian, so you already know para, apara, right? Whereas in America, you don't know. Superior, inferior. Para, supreme, transcendental. Higher, apara, lower. So material, and para and apara refers to matter and spirit. Right? Para, supreme, apara, not supreme. So, Bhagavad Gita 7.4, Bhumir apo nalo, Bhumir apo na kammano bhure cha ankara iti ame dina pakriyasha. And the material elements, and then the next verse, 5, Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho. Yeah. Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho, the Jiva, the living entity, so that, and then the next verse, the Supreme Lord. So matter, living entity, Supreme Lord, that basically covers everything. So para and apara. But we are considered para as Jiva Tattva, superior to matter. So the elements of nature, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, and intelligence and ego all belong to the Lord's inferior material energy, apara prakriti. Whereas a living being, the organic energy, is his superior energy, para prakriti. Both of these prakritis or energies are emanations from the Lord, and ultimately he is the controller of everything that exists. There is nothing in the universe that does not belong to either the para or the apara. Para or apara prakriti. Therefore, everything is the property of the Supreme Lord. So one of the meanings of Isha is Ishvara, controller, the proprietor, all-pervading. That's a test question. Isa Vasha, one who's in everything, one who controls everything, one who's above everything, like that. So we've covered 2 test questions already. We're doing good. Because the Supreme Being, the absolute personality of Godhead, is the complete person, he has complete and perfect intelligence to adjust everything by means of his different potencies. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita after he describes his opulence? Then he says, but what's the need for all this detailed knowledge? Because it's like, I could just go on all day describing my Shaktis, but it's just a spark of my splendor. So like, what will you understand of the ocean? This is only a drop. So, and the Prabhupada said, he can adjust everything by means of his different potencies. And then the other verse, where it says that Bala, Krishna has Bala Shakti, Kriya Shakti. He has anything he needs done, he's got a Shakti that'll do it. And it just happens. Sabhaviki, it happens automatically. Just like he doesn't have to go to his computer and set the program. It's all set. So whatever Krishna needs done, it's done by a Shakti. Unlike ourselves, when we need something done, we have to do it or we have to hire someone. But Krishna can manifest Shaktis, to manifest personalities in the form of Shaktis, and do everything. That's pretty good. And Now, how do we understand this? You say, well, that's interesting. Bala Kriya Jnana. Yes, Jnana Shakti, Bala Shakti, Kriya Shakti. It kind of covers everything. And so, my question to you is, if you were God, which means you could do anything, what would you do? Wouldn't you manifest Shaktis that do everything so you could go out and play with your friends? Isn't that what you would do? Or would you go to the office and work yourself? Today we need to make the sunrise, get out my computer, make sure it's on track. No, obviously not. So when we hear how Krishna can do everything, then we want to go back to this idea of Supreme Controller, because it's such an interesting idea. Because we have no idea what Supreme Controller means. We need to think about it more. Supreme Controller means there's nothing that controls him, and he controls anything. So anything that he can imagine, he can do. Right? If he needs a person to create, or a Shakti to create, that's no problem. Just okay, done. I just thought of it, and it's done. We need to create the universe. Okay, we'll let Brahma do that. We'll give Brahma all the information he needs, and then he can do it. But just like some devotees, we were listening to class in Mayapur, and said, if you look at Krishna's Leela, it's very much like a drama. And in theater, or especially in movies, you have the director, the producer, and what else do you have? Director. Oh, you have the actors, of course. So the director is telling the actors, no, do it this way, show this. And of course you have the script writer. So you have the script, you have the director and the producer, and then you have the cameraman. And Krishna's all of that. But he's the best director because he's in the heart. So he directs from within the heart, not outside. So he can get all these people to play their perfect parts, right? All the demons and the devotees, and everything happens perfectly, and he's orchestrating, this is just the way I want it, so it's all going to happen this way. That's the meaning of Supreme Controller. So when you hear Krishna's Leela and all these amazing things are going on, and Duryodhana is acting in a certain way, and the Pandavas and this and that, it's all just like a drama. It doesn't even seem like it's real, isn't it? That's why they're all blockbusters, Mahabharata, Ramayana, but it's all real, which makes it even more amazing. But that's the meaning of Supreme Controller. Whatever he wants to do, however he wants to do it, it doesn't have to make sense to us. He can do it that way. Why can he do it? The answer is because he can. So just imagine if for 24 hours you were God, what would you do? Would you go to work? Would you get old? Would you have arthritis? Of course not. So, the conclusion is, if you're getting old, if you're getting arthritis, if you're getting hungry, not everyone in the world loves you, you must not be God. You must not be the Supreme Controller, because if you were, you would have controlled all those things. And if you're the Supreme Controller, then none of those things happen. And if some demon is harassing you, and there's danger, it's only because you have arranged it that way for some excitement in your life. And for some Leela, for all your devotees forever to talk about. That's why oh no, the demon is, Agasur is coming, or this or that. No, it's all a drama written, produced, directed by Krishna. It's all happening perfectly. And then just at the right moment, he kills the demon. Now we have something to talk about, something to think about. Otherwise, what are you going to think about? So, continue reading. The Supreme Being is often compared to a fire, and everything organic and inorganic is compared to the heat and light of that fire. Just as the fire distributes energy in the form of heat and light, the Lord displays his energy in different ways. He thus remains the ultimate controller, sustainer, and dictator of everything. He is the possessor of all potencies, the knower of everything, and the benefactor of everyone. He is full of inconceivable opulence, power, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. So, as we're saying here, Prabhupada is just defining this is what God is. This is not just the supreme controller, but the supreme source of all energies. And the one thing that Prabhupada says that is not, maybe would be considered politically correct in today's world, Krishna is a dictator. Ooh. Well, what is your definition of God? He's a dictator. Whatever he says, you must do, or you'll burn in hell forever. And that's not such a popular idea. So how do we understand dictator? Although we understand that Krishna becomes subservient to his devotee. So how is he a dictator? Well, in the sense we're speaking, whatever he says happens. But there's, so whatever he thinks happens, whatever he says happens, whatever he wants happens. So he's the supreme, ultimate, as Bhakti Siddhanta said, the ultimate autocrat, supreme autocrat. Because whatever he thinks and wants, it happens. But there's another way we can look at it from the point of bhakti. So if someone's a dictator, it kind of makes us more or less like slaves of the dictator, doesn't it? We have to do what the dictator says. But for a devotee, that's not bad. Actually, we like being slaves. In fact, the ultimate goal of a devotee is to be a slave of the supreme autocrat, Krishna. That's what we want. We want to be slaves. We want to do whatever Krishna wants. So when we hear the word dictator, it has a bhakti meaning. I want to do whatever Krishna wants me to do, and that's my highest happiness. So Krishna, tell me what to do, I'll do it. That's my happiness. You dictate, I do. I am your slave. Otherwise, I'll be the slave of Maya. So choose who you want to be a slave of. So we use the word slave and everyone gets nervous, right? You like the word slave? Make you feel good? It doesn't make us feel good, but the reality is we're all slaves anyway. It's just who you're going to be a slave of. Your mind, your senses, the government, your wife, your children, your husband, your boss. Can't avoid it. So I'm a slave of so many people. I don't know about in your country. I think you've changed things. But in America, you have to pay tax. You have to pay. If you don't pay tax, they will take you to court to get that money. And you'll have to pay more money. So if you're a citizen and you make money over a certain amount, you have to pay tax. That's just the way it is. You can't control that. So we're slaves of the government, and they give you a choice. You can pay your taxes online, or you can send a check in the mail. That's your freedom. That's what freedom means. You're free to pay your taxes by check, money order, or credit card. That's your freedom. But other than that, we're slaves of so many things. So an intelligent person thinks, well, if I'm a slave, I might as well be a slave of Krishna, because he's the best person to be a slave of, right? Hare Krishna. So read the next paragraph. One should therefore be intelligent enough to know that except for the Lord, no one is a proprietor of anything. One should accept only those things that are set aside by the Lord as his quota. The cow, for instance, gives milk, but she does not drink that milk. She eats grass and straw, and her milk is designated as food for human beings. Such is the arrangement of the Lord. Thus we should be satisfied with those things he has kindly set aside for us. And we should always consider to whom those things we possess actually belong. So, one way to understand this is, look at this big city of Bangalore. Well, let's look at New York first. Well, we're in Bangalore, but let's think of New York, because once in New York, Prabhupada was talking to a sannyasi and he said, have you noticed how beautiful the women are in New York? Telling this, Prabhupada's playing with the sannyasi. Have you noticed? What's the sannyasi going to say? If I have noticed, I must not be a sannyasi. But as my spiritual master noticed, why is he saying this? Then Prabhupada said, the women in New York, they're very beautiful. Have you noticed? And he said, and you see all these buildings, these big skyscrapers. He said, do you know why they all exist? It's because the women in New York are so beautiful that the men will work so hard to satisfy them that you need this big, big arrangement of economic, for the economy to thrive. You need this big arrangement. He said, it's all because the man is attracted to the beautiful woman, that this whole city of New York exists. Isn't that interesting? I'm getting to this point of accepting what you need as your quota. So, you all heard of Beverly Hills? You know Beverly Hills? If you don't know Beverly Hills, then you're very Krishna conscious. Okay. I knew about Beverly Hills before I was a devotee. So, in fact, I lived a mile from Beverly Hills. So I used to go there all the time. But Beverly Hills is a very wealthy area, and it's maybe 3-4 miles from the temple in Los Angeles. So Prabhupada would, in the early days, Prabhupada would walk in Beverly Hills. This is very big, big, wide streets. This is can you imagine a residential neighborhood, 4-lane roads in a residential neighborhood? You can't even imagine. And in front of every house, you can't imagine. Huge lawns and big driveways with expensive cars, and every house is different, and they're all beautiful. Like, really beautifully designed. And so Prabhupada's walking there, and he's looking at the houses, and he turns to the devotees and he said, if these men were not married, do you think they would live in houses like this? What's the answer? No way. Most men would not live in big, beautiful, ornate, expensive houses. And what to speak of what they look like outside, wait till you go inside. Just amazing. Because these people in Beverly Hills these are the doctors, the lawyers, the surgeons, the actors, the producers, the bankers. That's where the wealthy people live. So they have enough money to make their house beautiful. And so when we say accept your quota, what does your quota mean? Your quota means is what you need, not what you want. Right? And Prabhupada often talks about exploiting the resources of nature. And so now there is a global crisis. I gave the solution yesterday night to the global crisis. There's a global ecological crisis because we're, as Prabhupada says, exploiting the resources of nature. We're taking too much. There's shortages. Now they say the next wars are going to be fought over water, not oil. There's going to be water shortages. Can you imagine? You remember my solution last night for the ecological crisis? We just destroy the human race, and that solves the problem. So now we've created these huge cities. Yesterday we drove an hour through traffic to get to the program. It was just driving and driving, the city that never ends. Cement everywhere. And so there's cement everywhere, and the cement keeps expanding, right? The city's growing. It's much bigger, isn't it? It's crazy. Cement everywhere. So how do you grow food on cement? We've covered the fields with cement and built big houses. And many of us have houses much bigger than we require. isn't it? Yes? Many people have houses. You go in the brahmachari ashram, there's 6 brahmacharis living in a closet, basically. The size of, that some people in big homes, their closets are the size of the room that 6 brahmacharis live in. Seriously. So this is interesting because often Prabhupada says that Krishna consciousness is the solution to all problems, and sometimes we think, but there's so many problems, how could chanting Hare Krishna solve it? But you actually see chanting Hare Krishna changes the way you think, and this is one of the big problems in the world today. We're exploiting nature in a way that most people, many people, well, at least American people, have more than they require. So I want to explain a few things. If you go on a trip for 3 weeks, then you go around your house and you put everything in your suitcase that you think you'll need for 3 weeks, right? I've been traveling since October 4th. I left my home in Alachua October 4th. So November, December, January. So I've been on the road for 5 months and 10 days more or less? What's the date today? 14, 13? Yeah. I've been traveling for 5 months and 10 days. And everything I need is in a suitcase. Isn't that interesting? That you could actually live your life fairly comfortably by going through your house and putting everything you could fit that you think you need for a 3-week trip into your suitcase, and actually realize that's actually all you need for the rest of your life. Of course you might say, but what about my kitchen? I don't have my pots and pans. Well, I could fit a few pots and pans in my suitcase also. Thank you. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it? Yeah. So if you think, no, I don't have too much. If I walk in and look in your closet, I probably will find more than you need, right? And when I go through your closet and look at all your saris, I'll say, when was the last time you wore that sari? You go, about 3 years ago. Yeah. And so now you go to the mall, and let me ask you a question. Of all the things in the mall, how many things do we actually need? What percentage of things that are in the mall do we actually need? Take a guess. What do you think? 5% maybe? 0%. 0%? Could be. So we have a problem. And this verse is dealing with this problem. Accepting what you need. That's not easy. Because most of us don't accept what we need, we accept what we want. And what I have noticed for most people is the more money you make, the more you buy. Have you noticed that? And the bigger house you have, the more you can put in it. Have you noticed that? There's more space, so you can fill it up with more stuff. If you have a small house, you can't buy much. I once, when I was first married, we lived in what we call a motor home. It's a house on wheels. And it's very small. And there's no room for anything in there. Just like a jacket and a few kurtas and dhotis, a few saris. My wife hated it, and I loved it. I thought, this is great. There's no room to put anything. There's no need to go shopping because there's no place to put it. I loved it. And so we existed on absolutely what we needed. Right? When you do parikrama, and you go and you camp out and you realize, I don't need very much, isn't it? Because what do you take on parikrama? One change of clothes, basically? One chadar, one extra kurta and dhoti, like that, and you wash it every day. You live so simply. So, when we say Krishna consciousness is a solution, this verse would solve all the ecological problems, wouldn't it? And it would solve poverty also. Now, here is something heavy. I think it's later. I'm gonna read a little. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to read a little ahead because I think Prabhupada mentions this. If he doesn't, then I will mention it. Let's go to the next page. It is wrong, however, to think that simply by becoming a vegetarian one can avoid transgressing the laws of nature. Vegetables also have life. And while it is nature's law that one living being is meant to feed on another, for human beings the point is to recognize the Supreme Lord. Thus one should not be proud of being a strict vegetarian. Animals do not have developed consciousness by which to recognize the Lord, but a human being is sufficiently intelligent to take lessons from the Vedic literature and thereby know how the laws of nature are working and derive profit out of such knowledge. If a man neglects the instructions of the Vedic literature, his life becomes very risky. A human being is therefore required to recognize the authority of the Supreme Lord and become his devotee. He must offer everything for the Lord's service and partake only of the remnants of food offered to the Lord. This will enable him to discharge his duty properly. In Bhagavad Gita 9:26, the Lord directly states, another problem with this book, it wasn't laid out properly. The spine, this book needs to be redone. Go call Bhima and tell him. It's because there should be space here by the spine so you can read it. Right? So many problems. A human being is therefore required to recognize the authority of the Supreme Lord and become his devotee. He must offer everything for the Lord's service and partake only of the remnants of food offered to the Lord. This will enable him to discharge his duty properly. In Bhagavad Gita 9:26, the Lord directly states that he accepts vegetarian food from the hands of a pure devotee. Therefore, a human being should not only become a strict vegetarian, but should also become a devotee of the Lord, offer the Lord all his food, and then partake of such prasadam, or the mercy of God. Only those who act in this way to properly discharge the duties of human life. Those who do not offer their food to the Lord eat nothing but sin and subject themselves to various types of distress, which are the results of sin. The root of sin is deliberate disobedience of the laws of nature through disregarding the proprietorship of the Lord. I'll read that again. That's interesting. The root of sin is deliberate disobedience of the laws of nature through disregarding the proprietorship of the Lord, like destroying the Amazon rainforest. That would be disobedience of a natural system that Krishna has created. So then the human beings come and they mess up the natural system, and then you start having all kinds of problems, like you can't even breathe the air anymore because the air is so polluted. What about the air in your beautiful city? Is it polluted? Yes? On the verge of competing with Delhi? I don't think you can compete with Delhi. But, you know, the root of sin is deliberate disobedience of the laws of nature through disregarding the proprietorship of the Lord. Disobeying the laws of nature or the order of the Lord brings ruin to a human being. Conversely, one who is sober, who knows the laws of nature, and who is not influenced by unnecessary attachment or aversion is sure to be recognized by the Lord and thus become eligible to go back to Godhead, back to the eternal home. So, really, when I look at this verse, one of the things that stands out, aside from the first part of Krishna being the Isha, the controller, is how relevant this
verse is to the present ecological crisis and the present emphasis on consumerism, which has enveloped our beautiful country to such a degree that more and more the places of worship are becoming the malls. And the places of worship are being utilized for economic purposes. I will pray and worship so that I can get money, so then I can go to the mall, basically, or buy a bigger home or like that. So just a little history on economics, that in order for the current economic model to survive, economy has to be expanding, and so they always talk about gross national product and how it's growing, and if it doesn't grow, it's a crisis. That means everyone has to keep spending money, and if you stop spending money, it creates a problem, which is directly in contrast with what this verse is saying. It's saying, don't spend money, just spend money on what you need, and don't worry about all the other people who have more money than you. Just accept what you need and be happy with it. This verse would if the human population followed this verse, it would destroy the present economic model. Right? And so certainly no government of the world would want anyone to follow the first verse of Isopanisad. No matter what Modi may say or any politician may say how much Hindu they are, they're not Hindu because they would not like this verse. At least they're not Hindu enough to like this verse. Isn't it? Isn't it true? Because this verse would destroy their economy. And in your country, the whole thing is to industrialize and, well, you know, your industry is big on serving companies around the world through software services, accounting services, and managerial services. So this is very important for you, and with this, you believe you will solve so many problems. So let's talk about this, because I wanted to take a little time, because this is important. I mentioned earlier that Prabhupada said you shouldn't work more than 8 hours a day. You should be satisfied with whatever you get. So this is the first principle. What are you going to get according to your karma? Be satisfied with that. And there are many places in which Prabhupada said you will not get more. No matter what you do, you won't get more. Which is interesting, because we're all trying to get more. Isn't it? You have a job, but then you find you can get a better job, you'll get better salary. So let me quit this job and get more. I'm doing a business, let me see how I can expand my business. There's a problem. I don't know if I've told you this story, but it's a very interesting story, and it indicates a problem that we all face, and you may not even be aware of the problem. There was a group of devotees. They came to America from Dubai. They were on tour, and they were going to visit various highlights of ISKCON in America. And so they came to Alachua. Alachua is where I live, and Alachua is probably the biggest community of devotees in America. And they knew me, and they said, could you arrange some programs for us? So we did that. And so one of our godbrothers was facilitating, his wife, myself, and himself and him. We were facilitating. And so he asked them a question. He said, if you had a job and you were working 8 hours a day and you were making sufficient money to live, maybe not enough money to send your son or daughter to Oxford or Harvard, but enough money that they could be educated sufficiently to have sufficient amount of money to live, and you have enough money to live comfortably. Let's use the word sufficient. You have sufficient income, and you're offered another job. It's a higher post. It's more responsible position, so you're going to your salary will increase. but your hours will increase. Potentially your hours could increase. You may have to work weekends. You may have to work overtime because now you're in charge. You have to make things work. So we're looking like increasing your hours from 8 to 10 to 11, and perhaps weekends also sometimes. You may have to work a whole day. Whereas your present job, you're working 5 days, 8 hours a day. How many of you would take the new job? That was his question. He had made an assumption that no one would raise their hand because taking the new job would minimize their sadhana in their time they could do service. And assuming that if you have enough, why do you need a better job which would compromise your bhakti just so you could maybe send your kid to Harvard instead of a local college? Why would you do that? It wouldn't make sense. So, in asking that question, he was going to take it to the next level and say, yes, we just need to live simply. Having preached in Dubai, having lived in India, I knew the answer was not going to be stay in the present position. I knew what the answer was. And he got 100% response that I would take the job. And he almost fainted. He was totally thrown off because as a teacher you assume how students will respond so that your following lesson follows up from their response. And he had to spend about the next 20 minutes explaining why that was a bad choice. And he was asking, why would you do that? And they had so many reasons. Well, more prestige, have a higher position, people will respect me more, and then when I preach, I'll have more power, and these kinds of things. And Prabhu, you won't have any time to preach. You just increase your hours about 20 hours a week. How are you going to have time to preach? So, then I heard something that Prabhupada said. I can't say for sure Prabhupada said it because I didn't hear it personally. But it makes perfect sense to me. Prabhupada said the American disease is sex and the Indian disease is money. Because if you go to America and you see the average American devotee, money is not such an issue. That's not what they have problem with. We were raised with money. It's not such a big thing for us. I mean, it's a big thing, but not such a big thing. It's a bigger thing in India. Indians are more concerned than Americans. And Americans are more what's the word? Is absorbed. But sex is, well, you're catching up. You're catching up in India, but sex, you see with all the divorce and obsession and cheating and so forth, it's a very big problem in the West. That we've cultivated that problem. But in India, the money thing is such a bigger issue than it is in America. And so here in this verse, we're understanding that, okay, it's a big issue, we all need money, there's no question. But Prabhupada's saying, it's already in your karma. And that is not going to change. But what I see is that we're trying to change our karma. We're trying to, no, but I could do more and more and more. And let's try to transcend my karma. And my neighbor has more. He just got a new car. Let me keep up with him. And I'm not satisfied with what Krishna has given me. So that is the foundation of exploitation of this world. Now, let's look at it on a very practical level, right? When we buy something new, which is made from elements of the earth, instead of keeping something that we have, like this computer. Oh, they get a new computer. They have a faster processor, or I can't run this and that software. Okay, maybe for service. But if it's just, I don't need it and I want it, then we're using more materials from the earth to produce the new computer, right? When the old computer is fine. But we are being programmed in order for the economy to grow every year. We are being programmed, why don't you just throw away your computer or give it away or just put it in the closet and get the new one, because after all, you just got a raise. And, you know, it's only like, what, 30, 40,000 rupees? What's the problem? What?
You can afford it.
You can afford it because you just got raised, you know, whatever, 5,000-10,000 a month, so that's another lakh a year, and this is only, what's the problem? You know, and you work hard and you deserve it, and you know, and everybody in your office has a new computer, and you know, you look like some kind of nerd or geek if you don't get the new computer. So this is what's going on, and this is what this verse is preaching against. Kashva Sviddanam, don't take more than your quota. So what's my quota? What comes naturally and easily is my quota. So does it mean we don't work? Does it mean we don't try to expand our business? No. Does it mean we don't try? No. It means we don't over-endeavor to try to go beyond what we're meant to have. Now, the thing I wanted to tell you that's not in the purport, Prabhupada said, and maybe you've read this, maybe it comes up in the next purport, it is sinful to accumulate more than you require, because now you're exploiting the earth beyond what the earth was meant to give you. That's interesting. Okay, now, thank you. I heard an interesting morning walk. They were talking about big homes, big, beautiful homes. And Prabhupada said, in Vedic times, it was only the Kshatriyas who had the big palaces and the temples that were big and beautiful, but everyone's homes were simple. Now you will find this funny, but in America, some devotees' homes are nicer than the temples. Some devotees' homes are bigger than the temples. Some devotees' homes cost more than the temples. Did you know that? Yeah. Because in America, you buy big, you know, with the salaries you make, you get huge homes in certain neighborhoods. And some temples are struggling financially. It's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? To have a home that's nicer than the temple. So accept what you need to live comfortably. That's what this verse is talking about. And what our social programming is telling us is that if you just accept what you need, that's not considered materially being successful. You could have more, you could be better. And you should be. Because what will people think of you if you live simply? And it doesn't say Gucci on your purse. What are they going to think of you? They'll think you're a total failure. You can't even afford a Gucci purse or whatever tie. I don't know. I'm not up on the latest. Yves Saint Laurent. You have something, right? That's what is going on, and that is what is destroying the world, because we're producing. But someone just told me we're creating problems by producing, because styles are always changing. Clothes styles are changing. That's how the clothes industry makes money. We're growing cotton. We're exploiting the earth for cotton, just so we can have the new style and fill our closets with the old style, right? Yes? No, Krishna Chaitanya. Oh, talk closer here. Did you know that? That it's becoming environmentally hazard or a form of disrupting the natural flow of the ecology to grow so much cotton? Did you know that? For, you know, and how does the industry work? It works on fashion, right? New fashion, right? Yes? Cash crops. Yeah. So, items which are not necessary, if we can get people to buy them, the economy grows. And that's the basis of it. That you're buying, most of what you're buying, you don't need. That keeps the economy growing. And that is destroying the earth, polluting the earth. And it keeps, and your cities keep expanding. So that, and now we're all, in India, we're very happy. We can get good jobs, we can work for foreign companies, we can make good salaries, we can all have cars. Great, you all have cars, yeah. That's fantastic. You can sit in traffic. It takes you an hour to go 3 kilometers. Fantastic. You can walk 3 kilometers an hour and it's healthier. So, you know, you think this is great. You know, we're all earning a sufficient salary. We can have cars, we can have nice apartments, we can have television in every room. It's all this is polluting the planet. Isn't it? Yeah. And if you grow up in this culture, you don't even think like this. You just think this is normal. And you're being judged by the car you drive, the neighborhood you live in, and the clothes you wear. So it's stimulating you to get ahead, get that better job, spend more, look better, get the better watch, and so forth. Isn't it? That's the problem. So that's what this verse is addressing. It's a sin to accept more than you need. That's a sin because you're exploiting the resources of nature beyond what is necessary. Isn't that interesting? Now, the next question comes, and I presented this when we were first talking, which is such an interesting point. One should accept only what is his quota and not more. So what does that mean? If Prabhupada's saying I can't get more than my karma, so what's my quota? Well, I think one way we can look at it is, what do you actually need to live? What is the human quota? What do we actually need? And especially for devotees, we are supposed to live simply, aren't we? Yes? Supposed to. When you ever heard that saying? Simple living, high thinking? Yeah. Oh yeah, simple living, high thinking. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. That's supposed to be how we live, right? Our lives are quite complicated, aren't they? When you think about it. Isn't it? And then Prabhupada talked a lot about go back to the land, live simply, get out of the city. And in India, it's all get out of the country. Get off the farm into the city, get yourself a good education, so you could spend the next 40 years sitting in front of a computer, which is really healthy for you. Like, staring at, getting all the electromagnetic frequencies staring in your face under artificial light in a very stressful environment. It's amazing. That's where it's going. And so that is the underlying message here in this verse. And then this is also interesting because the translations we read is that don't desire the wealth of others. That some people, according to their karma, are going to have more wealth than you. And that could put you in anxiety. Oh, they're so rich. I want to be rich. So I'm going to work hard so I can get more money, so I can buy all these useless things that my neighbors have that are not necessary, because I feel like I'm missing out. Right? This is the illusion that Prabhupada was trying to educate us in. Now, when Prabhupada was preaching this, he was preaching this to hippies. So we already accepted this. It was very easy. This message is harder for Indians in 2020 because you are anything but hippies. You are pretty much the opposite. And so as hippies, we were quite renounced by nature. We didn't have much, we didn't want much, we didn't feel that way of life was valuable. So it was very easy to adopt Krishna consciousness. And then we opened many farms in America. It was natural. It was a natural progression. Right? So these are, I'm not making any judgments And I'm not speaking practical steps. I'm just saying Prabhupada did preach a lot about simple living, and he did preach a lot about, obviously, about cow protection, living off the land, growing your own food, and so forth. Somebody said growing your own food is like printing your own money. Yeah, like right here. Hari, you could grow at least 100 cabbages, 100 cauliflowers, 100 broccoli. So these are things to think about. Then you might say, well, it's kind of too late for me. I've already got my education. I've already got my mortgage. I've got to pay for my cars. I've got my job. I can't do a whole lot about it. All right, maybe you can't do much now, but don't take that new job where they increase your hours to another 10 or 20 a week. But you can do something for your children. Based on this verse, consider, what do you want for your children? Do you want them to sit in front of a computer for 40 hours a week for the rest of their life? Is that, and give them so they can get all the finer things in life? It's so funny, I have to give you American perspective, because America is a very big country, right? So, in America, people have houses on land, which in India is kind of rare. Like this is like opulence, right? This little backyard here, isn't it? Considered like, isn't it? Well, it's shared by, you're in the middle. It's not so opulent because there's like 20 other apartments looking at you. But in America, they actually have land, like in front of their house. They have backyards much bigger than this. That's normal. And they have apartments, but usually apartments are for poor people who can't afford homes. Have any of you lived in America or been there? So you know what I'm talking about. There's so many homes. So apartments you'll find in bigger cities like New York and like that, where it's crowded. But once you get out of New York City, it's homes. And I don't live in a city. I live, basically my house and my neighbor's house is on a plot of land bigger than any of your parks here. You have your little parks? Well, our houses are on land maybe 4 times bigger than your little parks around here. Kind of interesting, isn't it? So when I come to the city, like last night when we were driving, and there's 500 motorcycles trying to get into one spot, so they can get home on time, breathing all the fumes with their backpacks, and I know they've been sitting in front of a computer for the last 8 hours. And I think, this is total insanity. And I look at this and I think, I can't believe anybody would do this. Anyone in their right mind. Why would they do this? And you know why they're doing it? Because they're hoping in a few years they're going to get up. In another few years get up, and someday they'll get up enough so they can afford a car. Right? And get a little bigger apartment, right? Isn't it? Am I right? It's totally insane. So that's why Prabhupada said the addiction in India is to money. And money is connected with prestige. Isn't it? You have more money, there's more prestige. And I don't want to find fault with anybody. This is not why I'm saying these things. I'm just trying to give an American perspective, because I think it'll help you be more objective, because you may not realize this. But in India, people are overly concerned with their position, or much, much more than America. The titles after your name, the position in the company. It's not so important in America. What's more important in America is to be a good person, be kind, and that's what people respect. Be honest, and so forth. People don't care so much how many titles you have after your name or what position. It's not such a, because people think that, this guy is just arrogant. that he's trying to let us all know that he's a PhD and he has this position in the company. Americans would think, ew, I don't like him. That's just arrogant. But in Indian culture, it seems, from my perspective, to be something very important. Where you work, what your position is, where you live, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, etc. So we have everyone on the treadmill, right? Going up. I need more money. I need more prestige. Right? So this first verse of Isopanisad is really just underlines that whole concept. Doesn't it? Be satisfied with what you have. Yes.
Yeah, you said that about America, they are more concerned on be kind than what
Be
position.
genuine. Be genuine. Be a good person. Yeah.
But how, like I've seen two kinds of civilization.
Two kinds of
civilization.
civilization.
Like if you see the Indian Vedic civilization, or just 100 years back, they were more Brahminical class exploiting the lower class.
Yes.
So their purity was more focused. Then be kind to others. The purity of consciousness and those things were focused. And his American civilization, where the focus is more on kindness than purity. Purity is zero, right? You do sense
They don't know
gratification.
they're not sure. They don't know what purity is.
Yeah. So you do whatever sense gratification you do, but just be kind to other people, but you can exploit the whole world.
Well, that's changing on. Well, this is a very interesting discussion. My answer to you is it's Kali Yuga and everything is topsy-turvy. Because you'll find, I would say, per capita, you will find more people in the Western countries concerned about the environment than you do in India. I can't say statistically it's true. It is just, it seems that way from my, any university you go to, you'll find lots and lots of young people talking about the environment, very concerned about it. I don't know if that's true here in India. It's not, yeah. We're in different stages, so they may not be Brahminical, but they have certain Brahminical tendencies. And you may be raised as a Brahmin and you're thinking money, 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 right? And young people who are not Brahminically trained, or Shudra or less, are thinking environment. We need to stop exploitation. We need to stop exploitation of workers in factories, and so they're concerned about these things. So my realization is topsy-turvy, Kali Yuga. It does nothing follows patterns anymore that are logical.
So my question is, two kinds of civilization I've seen which have their own good. Now in Krishna consciousness also we have both the principles. We have purity and also be kind to others.
Yes.
And sometimes it becomes difficult to judge that which we should prioritize. Should we first focus on purity, following regulative principle, consciousness, or first we should give for being kind to others, like especially when you're training to people. So one aspect is the purity, the consciousness. Another aspect is being kind to them.
I don't think that's the right question, because in my mind, purity would mean being kind. You wouldn't have purity and not be kind. You're talking about developing your own, but that's part of developing your own Krishna consciousness. It wouldn't happen like first I become pure, then I become kind. It would happen simultaneously.
Like I'm talking about stages, like a Brahminical is a more of purity than of kindness. Vaishnavism is about more of kindness and purity also. It's like a evolved form of Brahmanism. But sometimes Vaishnavism is considered kindness without purity also.
Why would you think of that? Maybe the modern day Brahmana, but the Brahmanas, they're the head of society, and the redeeming, the most outstanding quality of the Brahman is that they care for the welfare of everyone. That's their job. So how could we say that kindness is not part of their job description? It is. They're with you have Vaishyas who will exploit you, for every cent you have, right? The modern politicians will lie to you just to keep their position. And the Shudras, they don't know what to do. They're just, give me something to eat and give me sex and something, alcohol, and I'm happy. So it was the Brahmins who controlled that, because they were the only ones who were pure enough to not need anything from anybody other than to help them. So that, my understanding of Brahman, that was the basis of being a Brahman. They wouldn't exploit, and you need a class of men who won't exploit, because the other classes will exploit, especially in Kali Yuga. And therefore, as Vaishnavas, we are Brahmins and beyond. And so my understanding is, Prabhupada said, I'm creating a class of Brahmins. So I want to create these Brahmins who will go out in the world, who have the interest of people. There may be nobody else in the world who has the interest of people other than devotees. So we can create this class of men who actually care about people. But the problem that I see in doing that is that we have to live like Brahmins. Because if we don't live like this verse of Isopanisad, we're not living like Brahmins. We're living more like Vaishyas or Shudras. And it's also interesting. This verse is interesting because Shudras were never given money. Because if you give Shudras money, then you'll end up with what you have in the world today, a total mess. Because they'll spend money on alcohol, they'll spend money on cigarettes, they'll spend money on things they don't need, spend money on pornography, this and that. And we're trying to promote this. You know, yes, let's get the Shudras to work for us, and let's give them a lot of money because it's good for the economy, because they'll spend it. Right? And in Vedic society, no, you're a Shudra. You will misuse your money. You will degrade yourself. So we'll take care of you. We'll provide everything you need. Of course, it can't work. What Vaishya is going to take care of, 1,000 workers? So Prabhupada wanted to create a class of people who would not exploit. We're only interested in the welfare. And that class of people is supposed to be us. So if we're trying to expand our material life, get more and more and more, it's a bit of a contradiction. So there's another thing I want. Did that answer your question? Or yeah, there's another thing I want to say, which is interesting. And you should accept your quota, but everyone has a different nature. So your quota, you're a brahmachari, so your quota is 6 men in a room. Then you're fine with that. You've got like no space, private space, and you're okay. At least now you're okay. You might be okay your whole life like that, but just like very little. Someone else, by their samskars, by their nature, may have Vaishya nature, so they need a little more. That's the nature of Vaishya. Whatever they have, it's not enough. They always want more. Someone may have a Brahminical nature, which is they can live very simply. They don't need much, right? Someone may be Kshatriya nature. They need to control things. So accepting quota, it has 2 aspects. According to your karma, what is coming naturally and easily, and according to your nature, what do you need to be peaceful? Because maybe if he tries to live like you, he'll go crazy. And he can't chant his rounds because he's living in a room with 6 men. And it's like they're all driving him crazy. I need my own room. I can't, I have to move out of the ashram. I have to get married. I need my own space. So his quota is different. What he requires to be normal is different than what you require, is different than what he requires. But the point is to be normal. So, if you're raised in great wealth, what's normal for you is great wealth for him. And so if he lives like that, he'll go crazy. But if you live like that, well, that's just normal. So we have to also consider that sometimes you might see a devotee, they have a lot, but for them, that's just how they were raised. So that's their normal. And if they don't have that, they go crazy. You know what I mean? So that's another consideration of what your quota is. But usually that will also be influenced by your karma. If you have that nature, you'll tend to karmically get more. So that's something to consider. So it's not, because we're different, it's not exactly going to be the same for everyone, what's required, right? Grihastas require a little more than brahmacharis, obviously, right? Grihastas require more than vanaprastha. So what you need, accept what you need, that's what the verse says, right? What do you need to exist peacefully so now you can execute your Krishna consciousness? It's when you accept more than you need. You actually need this. Like, I'll give you an example. This is beautiful. My father, He's not alive now, but when he was born in 1904, and the stock market crashed in 1929. It was the greatest economic, what's the word? Devastation. Greatest economic disaster in the history of the United States. It's 1929. And my father was 25 years old. He was a lawyer at that time. And he said, the economy was so bad, nobody could afford a lawyer. And so he gave up his law practice. His father had a business. He helped his father in their business. And so they had to live very frugally. There's massive unemployment. You could see pictures of it. People were lined up on the street in America to get some soup and bread. It was crazy. When you think America, people lined up. So it was very, very, very difficult time. So that's how my father grew up. He later developed a business and became very well off, and he could afford whatever he wanted. But he always kept that mentality because he grew up at that. He had that samskara of don't spend money if you don't need it. And so he died in 1996. But if you went in his closet, he had clothes that were most of them were 20, 30. Well, at that time when he died, I was 46, so I could say they were at least 46 years old. It's the same clothes. He heard, and my sister said, you should buy some new clothes. He said, why? I have plenty of clothes. I don't need any clothes. And, they were all fine. And whenever she retired from her job because he was sick, and so she was helping him, so he would give her money because she wasn't working. And she would ask for money to buy something, and he would always say, do you need it or do you want it? We always ask them. But that's how he grew up. And he left her like $500,000 when he died, but she'd want to buy something for $5, and he would say, do you need it or do you just want it? So he was frugal that way. So I think that's a really good way to think when you're dealing with money and you're buying something. Do I need it or do I want it? And the one of the things that we've been conditioned to do is tell ourselves we need something when actually we just want it and we don't need it. And we no, I really need my phone. My phone has so many cracks. I'll show you someday. It's cracked. Even I bought a cover and then the cover cracked. And that cover was like 40 euros or something like that. So do I need a new phone? Not really. It works. It still works. It's cracked. The cracks aren't over the lenses and it's not cutting my fingers. But I could think, no, really, you really need a new phone and that's like 3 years old and it's cracked. What are people going to think of when they see your cracked phone? So you can make up so many reasons why you need something that you don't actually need. Right? And that's what we're conditioned to do. So, Sri Prashna Avatarini has a question.
Varies from person to person, like a Vaishya may require more than how much a Brahmana requires. So then, if a Vaishya uses only as much as he needs and passes his life peacefully, so then is he promoted to the life of a Brahmana in his next life, or is that the goal that he has to attain?
So, is a Vaishya promoted to a Brahmana in his next life? Well, this is an interesting question because in Prabhupada's books, he said, by following Varnashram Dharma, we could say following Krishna consciousness, people will be elevated to become Brahmins. So, but you might say, but Sureshwar, he's a Vaishya, he has a business, or Madhusudan Hari, he's a Vaishya, he has a business. But we exist within the Brahminical culture, so Vaishya is what I do, but it's like my core is not Vaishya. My core is Vaishnava. And my core is Vaishnava culture, which is basically Brahminical culture. So even though I'm not Brahmin, which means I don't do puja all day, the culture is Brahminical. I rise early, I worship my deities, I chant. So our goal is to be Brahminical. Whether you, by nature, at the core are Brahminical, maybe you are something else. Maybe you like to control and manage and everything. You have that nature. But the culture within that we're cultivating is Brahminical. Cleanliness, samadhamataposocham, all these things.
So all Vaishyas, all devotees, they have to follow the Brahminical culture.
Yeah, because Brahminical culture is sattva, sattva guna. And if we're not sattvic, then what are we? Just like everybody else. Rajasic and tamasic. So Krishna consciousness needs a Brahminical foundation. We can change the word Brahminical to sattvic. We need a sattvic foundation. And from that foundation we can transcend.
Alright, so then that Brahminical nature that all Vaishnavas are expected to have, so then the inbuilt nature that we have in us to have more and
Purify
maybe
that.
the-
Purify it.
Yeah. So that has to be changed.
Slowly, gradually purify it. Yeah. I mean, see, the thing is, like we're studying this verse, right? And so you may hear this verse and say, well, I don't know if I'm ready to like move to a farm and grow my own vegetables and live in a mud hut. But at least we understand something more simple is required of our lives. And especially as you get older, in your 50s and 60s, that's when you're supposed to live more simply. You give these things up. Okay, you had them. You had the nice this and the nice that. So we understand, okay, this is where we're trying to go. I may be here, I may be here, I may be here. But this is the level. So that I ultimately have time for devotional service. And simultaneously, my life is not lived in a way that it's destroying the planet, because we should, as devotees, it's not that we don't care about the planet, we do. Mother Bhumi, so we're meant to be caretakers of the planet, so we should be sensitive. We need to be more aware. It's not something that Prabhupada per se focused on, but I'm sure if he were here today, he would have much to say about the use of plastics and so forth, contaminating the earth, because he always spoke about living naturally, and he liked that himself personally, and that's what he wanted from us.
Maharaj, if the whole world turns Krishna conscious, and everybody becomes a Brahmana, then there'll be nobody to work.
Brahminical culture. No, if the whole world becomes Krishna conscious, it's going to be a gradual process. And so, there's always Shudras, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, Brahmins. Not everyone will be engaged in Brahminical occupation.
Although that's
But through Varnashram Dharma, they'll become more sattvic. That's the idea. They'll become purified in sattvic. And so, okay, here's a problem. We cannot force people to be anything, but we can help people be better than they were yesterday. And so, in the spreading of Krishna consciousness, we teach principles, and we say you should try to come closer to these principles. We don't force anyone. No, you have to be a Brahmin, you have to get initiated. That's a mistake, because if we do that, then we limit the number of people who can relate to and practice Krishna consciousness. We say, understand the principles, practice it in whatever condition of your life. Apply these principles. Chant Hare Krishna. Chant one round. Give up eating meat. Reduce your material needs as much as you possibly can. And in this way, gradually adopt Krishna consciousness principles, so that everyone will then gradually go in their own level. You can't force people who are not Brahminical to be Brahminical, but they can be more sattvic in certain ways, for sure. That's necessary.
Then see all the devotees of ISKCON, they will remain very much, simply they'll all be living simple lives only. Nobody will be rich. In terms of...
No, but you can't help being rich. If it's your karma, you'll be rich. Don't worry. It'll happen.
But the lives will be simple, small homes, because they know that...
Lives will be more simple. And then our energy will be used in service more. That's the idea. I mean, a nice question we could ask, if everyone in the world lived like I lived, would that be good for the planet or bad for the planet? If everyone had your lifestyle, would that be good for the planet or bad for the planet? For him, yeah. 6 men in a room, yeah. He wouldn't need these big crazy cities. You know, so why do we need these big crazy cities? Because people can't live simply. Right? Of course you could say there's so many problems in the village, and disease and poverty, and they don't have running water and they don't have toilets. That may be. I'm not an expert in that area, but somehow or other they've been living for the last billions of years that way. I don't know what the problem is nowadays. You know, that's the way India's been forever. So, yes.
The only problem in villages is modern culture. No other
They
problem.
want to be modern, yeah.
Modern,
They brought in modern culture.
modern culture, that's the only problem.
They brought in the television that destroyed everything. And what to speak of social media. But then you have this, like you're saying, the problem is that the propaganda is you're not happy. You could have more and this isn't a good life. But they live that way for generations. So, you know, medical treatment, that may be lacking. Some sanitary. We're not saying that we should neglect that, but that's the question. So if everybody lives like me, will the world be better or will it be worse? That's a good question, isn't it? Okay, so how do I live? I drive my car to work. So if everyone in the world drove their car to work for 10 kilometers or whatever, will the world be better or worse? If everyone lived on my standard, and I'd go in my house and look at all the things I have. How much do I need? How much? If everyone needed all the things I needed, would it be good or would it be bad? They did a study in America and they found that the average American has about 80% more than what they need. They could clean 80% out of their house and they would be fine. So the earth is being exploited to fulfill houses with 80% of things they don't actually need. Isn't that interesting? So then you say, well, how will Krishna consciousness change the world? Well, you can see from this verse how it would change the world. But the point is, you can't change the world if we don't live it. And this is, I think, a concern for us as Americans, because when we come to India, we look at India, it looks like America in 1950. The same thing happened in America. People left, you know, America in maybe the late 1800s, early 1900s, 50% of American people lived on farms. Did you know that? United States of America, 150 years ago, half the population was living on farms. What percent of the population lives on farms now? Maybe 5%. So everything's been moved into cities. Cities are polluted, they're crowded, same thing, traffic, 1 hour to go 3 kilometers, air pollution, you know, it's horrible. So I think one of the problems that we face as preachers is we're trying to preach simple living, but then people will look at you and say, well, how do you live? What are you doing? You know. So these are things we have to consider, and that's why I wanted to spend the whole 2 hours on this verse, because I think it's really relevant to the way the modern world is going. Because I think that the difference that I was saying in America now, when we look at what's going on and we see the pollution and the ecological difficulty, we look and say, okay, we made a mess in the name of economic development. Whereas India is a poor country, and we're like, wow, look at Bangalore, so many new companies, new buildings, modern this and that, and we think this is, we're like, oh, so beautiful. Never had this before. But in America, we don't think like that. We think we have enough of this. We need something simple. We need a better way of life. And so there's a whole movement in America where people get rid of most of the things in their house. Did you know that? And there's a whole movement in America where people only buy locally. They won't buy anything that's not made within 100 miles. That's interesting. So there's a consciousness. It's so interesting. There's more of a Krishna conscious in the non-Krishna conscious people in certain ways than there are in the Krishna conscious devotees. It's Kali Yuga. That's the only explanation. You have these people who are simplifying, who are growing their own food, who are buying locally. A lot of them working from home or starting businesses which don't pollute, creating environmentally friendly products, not using plastics. And then you have devotees who are doing all those things that the other people are not doing. We can't live like that. In America, I think the GBC passed a resolution that as far as possible you should not use any plastics, foam, this and that. You only use natural materials, which is like, why does the GBC have to pass a resolution to tell all the devotees don't pollute the earth and don't use products made of oil? Why do we have to be told? That's a problem. We should naturally be doing that. We should be having our own business selling banana leaf plates and these kinds of things. Right? Isn't it? That makes sense. But other people are doing it, not us. That's the weirdest thing that I've ever seen. Other people are doing things we should be doing. And we're going to the office 40 hours in front of the computer, and someone else is starting an eco-village and a company with eco products and natural fibers and so on. And we're like, doing software for some company that's like destroying the planet, some oil company somewhere. Isn't it? Yeah. I talk to devotees and I say, well, what do you do? And they say, I'm a chemical engineer. And I don't say anything, and I think in my mind, why would you ever do that? That is like total pollution of the planet. You're helping develop chemicals that are, going in our rivers and oceans. Isn't it? So we have to think more like that. Isn't it? I work for a big pharmaceutical company. Why would you want to work for that company? They're experimenting on animals. Half the drugs they're making 20 years from now are going to be taken off the market because they're dangerous. So you have to think more in these terms. Otherwise, we just think whatever makes money, I'll do, and that's kind of like justifies everything, isn't it? That mentality we have to get over. Let someone else ask a question. Yes.
As far as now we are being in association of devotees, suppose when we get to serve the devotees, so that time should we see, because to please the Vaishnava, should we see their need or want?
To please the Vaishnava, should we see what they need or what they want?
Maybe want maybe pleasing more and...
The devotees, they often say, like when they're serving prasadam, they say, do you want any more? And I give them a whole list of things that aren't on the menu. Yeah, I want puris, I want shrikand. Prabhu, is anything I can do for you? Yes. I want 100 men. I knew this and knew that. That's a funny question because you think, well, I would give you what you want, but I don't want to contaminate you. Guru Maharaj is asking for a new computer. No, Guru Maharaj, you don't need it. Not going to give it to you. I can't answer that question. But I think the principle is there. Right? Don't desire the wealth of others, accept what is your own quota, what comes naturally. Be happy. Because if you don't, you'll go crazy. And you'll work very hard to try to transgress your own karma. Work 2 jobs or something. And be happy. It's like, we have so many stories in our scripture of poor Brahmins who are just like, they didn't even have enough clothes to go around the house. When the husband went out, he took the cloth of the wife, and she had nothing to wear, and just crazy things. But it's always said that they were satisfied and accepted whatever Krishna gave them. Kolavecha Sridhar, very poor. Lord Chaitanya would deal with him, steal from him, and want discounts, and play with him. And half his money he was using to worship Ganga, and he practically had no money. So we have these examples. And Mahaprabhu, he's joking with him. He said, you're so poor, this and that. You have holes in your roof. And he said, no, it's air conditioned. no problem. So that's the example you have of these Brahmins. Just whatever. This is what Krishna gives me, so I'm satisfied. He might give me more, he might give me less. Sometimes you can't control it. Something happens, and you'll get more just out of okay, we're giving you a raise, new company, this and that. All right, whatever. Uncle Harry, gives you a big inheritance. Or the inheritance Uncle Harry was going to give you is all investments, and coronavirus destroyed all his investments. Now you get nothing. That's just the way it works, right? Isn't it? So, be satisfied. This is what Shastra says. Be satisfied with what you have. So it's 9 o'clock. We have to stop. No more questions. Time's up. So tomorrow, then we'll get through more verses. I just wanted to do, this verse was so important, I wanted to focus on this. Okay? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.